About 20 years ago, vampires, monsters thought to be fictional, appeared in the world. Disguising themselves as human, they existed in society, though nothing was amiss, and began attacking humans under cover of darkness. This made humans fear vampires. Rumors also spread. Some say they possessed powers beyond human intelligence. Others say if they bit you, then you'd turn into a vampire. There was no way to kill them, and they might be hiding right next to you. In the end, people could only keep suspecting each other. Suha was welcomed into Decilis Academy, a night school. Classes started at 9 p.m., something she'd have to get used to. The counselor apologized because they didn't usually take in transfer students this time of year, but there were no vacancies in the new dormitory, so they temporarily prepared the old dormitory for her. Also, according to school rules, students can't leave the school after sunset. Suha was warned to not wander around, especially since there was another murder nearby recently, rumored to be the work of vampires. Suha gasped hearing that. However, the academy was known for its comprehensive entrance exams, so the counselor assured there was no way a vampire could infiltrate the students or staff. They'd passed by another student who paused, catching eyes with Suha. He apologized, continuing on his way. Entering the old dormitory, her room was certainly something. This gotta be one of the worst default bed placements I've ever seen. And yet, Suha was so excited. This was Riverfield City's most famous school, known for thoroughly excluding vampires. She was so elated people wouldn't think she was a vampire anymore. This time, she was definitely going to live a normal campus life. A secluded and dirty room was nothing because of her superhuman strength. But with the boy walking in on her suddenly lifting the bed, she got flashbacks to her horrific childhood of people calling her a vampire. She frantically told him she wasn't a vampire, and he believed her. After all, vampires couldn't get in here. Regardless, she didn't want to even be suspected because she hated vampires. This caught the boy off guard. She remembered he told her he was here for a book and scrambled to grab it. It was a book about ancient legends. She began to run her mouth about how she liked reading too, but caught herself, apologizing for talking too much. She was just happy someone finally saw the way she was and didn't suspect her for being a vampire. After he left, he suddenly came back into the room to ask her name, getting her flustered. He thought Suha was quite cute. His name was Heli, and he was in the 12th grade. He'd talk about it with his boys, the red-haired Gino and blonde-haired Shion, explaining to them Suha was staying in the old dormitory they had used as a storage room. Shion was annoyed they couldn't hang out there anymore, but Heli said they could, as long as they made friends with Suha, especially since Shion was such a good conversationalist. Jaka brought up their stuff was still in there. Noah added they'd have to find time to get it. Solon and John entered, wanting to know what they were talking about, and John reminded them they couldn't be friendly with the other students. Heli understood what he was saying, but thought there was something different about Suha. He was strangely drawn to her. Solon questioned if their kind even had those feelings. But even getting close, humans would never accept them. That aside, he wondered why all of them were in his room. On her first day of school, Suha took a breath to calm her nerves. She spotted Heli with his boys and ran towards him, only to hear Solon tell them not to get involved with a new transfer student. Heli spotted her, and with them all looking her way, she wondered if it was true no one would accept her here either. They weren't expecting her to look so sad. Shion walked up to greet her right away and started shaking her hand. Gina would cut in, calling Shion a problem child and that she shouldn't get close. But she could be his friend instead. John would enter next, telling her not to worry about what Solon said, and that they didn't agree. Oh, bro. They all simping for her immediately. I see where this is going. John would add that this was their duty as humans. A very human thing to say, that they needed to be kind to transfer students. Suha was glad, despite Solon being cold towards her. Since they still had time before class, Heli offered to show her around, and the rest of the boys wanted in, except Solon. He ended up going with them anyway. First stop, the library, and it was vast. Wandering the halls, we learned Shion was a 10th grader, same as Suha and Solon. John and Gino were in the 11th grade, and of course, Heli was the oldest. There were also 2 other 9th graders, Jaka and Noah, who usually hung out with them as well. They were close because they grew up in the same orphanage. None of them had parents. They went to the sports field, where Noah and Jaka were attending practice. The two were fiercely competitive and always practiced extra. Suddenly, a night ball came flying at Suha, and John would body block to keep her safe. Noah and Jaka went a little too hard and apologized, but checking up on Suha, she was quite flush, being held in Heli's arms. She was thankful but made the excuse she forgot something and ran off to her room for now. By her dorm, she thanked Salon, who was waiting there. She could tell he was the one who pulled her out of the way when the ball came flying. He tried to deny saving her, using the excuse he just wanted to dust off her clothes. Who is buying that? He warned her not to get too close to them. They couldn't be friends with anyone. Internally, however, he wondered why he felt so strange, so drawn to her. The other boys talked about understanding what Helly meant. It's like she had a mysterious appeal, like some force was tugging at their heartstrings, as if it made them want to grant all her wishes. Xian wondered if this was love. Suha, meanwhile, began to cry, telling Salon she was fine not greeting them again, and he tried to tell her Hai was just fine. He sighed, telling her not to get the wrong idea. It's not like he disliked her, but he couldn't tell her the reason. The next day, Helly was waiting at her door. He wanted to head to class with her. He was pretty popular. All the students greeted him as they passed through the halls. He told her not to worry about what Salon said, and used telepathy to tell her they had some secrets they couldn't tell anyone. She couldn't believe he was speaking directly in her head. This was his special power. He was only telling her. Xian was happy to see Suha was in the same class as him. He wanted her to sit next to him, but she could see the seat already had someone else's stuff on it. Xian didn't care. He'd just tell Salon to move. Suha would panic, seeing he was right behind her, but he told her it was fine. With class over, Suha was going to clean her room, and Xian would invite himself over to help, along with the rest of the boys. They basically started simp maxing, with Xian saying cleaning was his favorite thing in the world. Even though the boys knew that wasn't true, Suha tried to help, but picking up a particular box, Xian would warn it was dangerous. The tarp came off, revealing a ton of heavy dumbbells. Her secret blown again. Helly took it off her hands, using his telepathy to tell her not to worry. He had this kind of strength as well. The boys realized he was using his telepathy on her, and he just simply asked her to keep it a secret. They'd keep her power a secret as well. Xian would show off that he could float. John would balance the dumbbells with precision. Gino could warm her hands with his fire if they got cold, and Noah could control darkness. Salam was getting irritated with his boys, but Suha would look towards him with curiosity. He wasn't going to show her though. After things were said and done, Suha was glad to have met other people that had special powers too. She remembered a time in her youth where Chris offered to be her friend when she was lonely, and thought Helly resembled him. Solon and Helly would argue over seeing her, however, because the truth was, they were vampires. Suha's room was now sparkling clean, thanks to all the guys. Still, she was concerned about all the powers they displayed. She'd been suspected of being a vampire countless times due to her powers. But now, she thought she wasn't the only one. Since there were other humans with powers here, maybe she could enjoy a normal school life. While out at night, throwing away her trash, a guy would sneak up behind her. But she turned the tables, slamming him over her shoulder. Suha thought he was a vampire. Then she noticed he had a different uniform. The guy's friends ran to him, calling out his name, Khan. Furious, Najak was about to attack her before realizing she was a girl. He stopped, but Suha used that chance to low uppercut like this was Tekken. The last one standing, Tahel, was surprised to see that she took out Najak as well. She frantically suspected they were vampires. Enzi then came in, explaining they were not. Matter of fact, that was the worst thing they could be mistaken for. That was because they hated vampires more than anything in the world. Just like her. They were students from Sunshine City School. Once introductions were made, Khan explained they were investigating a certain incident. Just then, Jaka and Noah showed up, shielding Suha with their bodies. They asked what the Sunshine City boys wanted with their schoolmate. Khan revealed that the victim of the recent murder was one of their school's students. Noah claimed it had nothing to do with them. Jaka insinuated they were involved somehow, stirring their anger. Before a fight could break out, Suha stopped them with her incredible strength. She let her schoolmates know it was all a misunderstanding and that she wasn't being bullied. Helly would then show up as well, telling Khan and the rest to get away from her. He then offered to take Suha back to her dorm. Walking away, Khan stopped him. They weren't done talking. He accused the vampires of killing their student, but they denied it. Neither side could come up with enough proof to defend their claims. Helly threatened them, asking what they would do even if the vampires were the culprits. At that point, he and Tahel were about to throw hands. His eyes glowed red with bloodlust, but Suha's voice resonated with them all as she told them to stop. Helly would apologize for scaring her and tell Khan they truly had nothing to do with the murder. He proposed they settle things during the upcoming Nightball match. Khan made it clear that the nightball match and murder were completely different, though he still boasted about crushing them. Walking back to their school, the Jack still believed their kin had been killed by vampires, and he didn't like the fact that the vampires thought they'd beat them again at nightball. Seeing Solon by the window, Enzi excused himself, saying he had something to do. Khan warned him to stay away from the vampires. Elsewhere, Solon stared at the moonlight outside. It was as though it called to him. He suddenly walked into the light, reaching for the moon. Lines of fur suddenly grew, and his nails sharpened like claws. Enzi would see the whole thing as he approached. They hadn't seen each other since last year's nightball game, and looking at Solon's appearance now, it was obvious he was a werewolf. Likewise, Enzi was the same. Solon reverted back to his normal form, arguing they were nothing alike. He hated being involved with werewolves, but his friends didn't know this side of him. It was quite rare to see vampire and wolf hybrids. After all, both species had always been sworn enemies. Enzi asked him to explain what was going on, but it wasn't like Solon was obligated to do that. Enzi would then explain that their student who was killed had clear bite marks on their neck, and their blood had been completely drained. Solon made it clear that they would never do such a thing. Of course, they experienced the impulse sometimes. It was the same way werewolves felt under a full moon, but on nights like these, their innate instincts acted up. But Enzi also stated they would never hurt a human. Solon and his friends weren't like other vampires. From their perspective, it was the other vampires who were wrong. Why did he think they were the only ones who were different? When Enzi asked how a werewolf and vampire hybrid was born, it wasn't that Solon didn't want to answer, but he couldn't. Not even he knew what he was. It was also the same for his friends, as though they were made somewhere, and one day they suddenly woke up from a long dream. Nevertheless, they had nothing to do with the murder, and they didn't see other vampires as their kin. The only thing Enzi could do was hope he was telling the truth. At least, half of Solon was like him. Enzi extended his hand to shake the hybrid, but Solon couldn't bring himself to do it. They then bid farewell. Back in the dorm, Suha thanked the boys again for coming to her rescue. Jaka and Noah happened to see her when they were coming back from practice. So how did Helly know she was in trouble? It seemed like he could sense her, but he lied that he just happened to be passing by. She was still glad he came. Before going to her room, she mentioned how Khan and his friends hated vampires, and she felt they were alike. Helly was stunned by this. Apparently, a long time ago, her friend was killed by a vampire, hence why she hated them. Entering her room, she plopped herself on the bed, relieved that the boys didn't get into a fight. Still, she wondered what exactly that moment was. There was a sudden urge she felt to stop Helly right away, or something terrible would have happened. Jaka felt Suha wasn't normal, and John felt the same way, considering she was as strong as him. But that wasn't what he meant. On their way back from practice, they sensed an unbelievable amount of energy. When they went to check it out, they saw it was Suha who was emanating power. It was such a tremendous amount, unlike anything they had ever experienced before. And when they nearly got into a fight, she managed to stop them. Their bodies temporarily froze, bound by her words. Solon would come in, questioning why everyone was in his room again. Well, Suha was using the room where they usually met. Besides, his room was the tidiest. He couldn't really blame them. Shion's was the same, but he didn't feel like cleaning up after, even after he claimed to love cleaning when helping with Suha's room, and even told Suha that. He was thinking, just kidding, teehee. Jaka mentioned the werewolves that came around, but Solon already knew about that, using the excuse he could smell their unpleasant stench. Thanks to the recent vampire attacks, people were suspecting them again. They couldn't really help it, but Helly didn't want Suha to get the wrong idea, or hate them because of that. This was why Solon didn't want them to be friends with her, but they just had to go off, showing their powers to her. Surprisingly, the boys didn't even know what Solon's powers were. They wondered if he was just actually an ordinary human. In any case, no one wanted Suha hating them, so Solon told them to stick to just exchanging pleasantries and quit being so friendly. They all agreed, but that'd never work. The next day, Shihan approached Suha, inviting her to hang out this weekend. To like this video and subscribe to my channel. I want to suck your blood, is what I'd say if I was a vampire. Good thing they aren't real, right guys? But what is real is my vampire playlist, featuring all the most popular vampire series I've covered in anime and manga. So come on, hit that subscribe and I'll be your guy. Solon would show up behind Shion, scolding him. Shion completely ignored him, asking Suha to go to the plaza and beach with him. That was the last thing Solon was about to let happen. So he decided to tag along with them. As they both started arguing, Solon informed the others of what Shion had done, expecting them to take his side. However, they decided to all tag along as well, though Helly would personally ask Suha, making his request a bit special. Back in her room, Suha was conflicted on what to wear. She still couldn't believe she was going out with friends. During her childhood, Chris would approach her, asking if she was a vampire. He told her to let the others know that she wasn't, but she didn't see the point of that. It wasn't like they'd believe her. On the other hand, he didn't think she was a vampire. Everyone else also said weird things about him because of his broken leg, so he felt they were alike in that regard. They became friends, and she had so much fun every day. For the first time in her life, she wanted to share her secret with someone. Displaying her superhuman strength, she'd pick up a large boulder in front of Chris, and he was surprised, but thought she was amazing and special. To show that he trusted her fully, Chris allowed her to bite his neck, and seeing that nothing happened, he proved that she wasn't a vampire. No matter what anyone else said, he'd always believe her. As the weekend arrived, the town was bustling with people enjoying themselves and going about different activities. Suha seemed to be the first to show up, waiting by a monument. Seconds later, Xian met up with her, complimenting how cute she looked. She asked where the others were, and he said they were too busy. Her expression became gloomy. Spending the whole day with Xian wasn't exactly what she wanted. She thought about texting Helly, but feared it would make him upset since he was supposedly busy. Still, it would have been better if he told her beforehand. So, she'd spend time with Xian, checking out all the sweet spots around the plaza and taking fun pictures. Then, they'd stop by an ice cream truck to get some treats. Meanwhile, the rest of the vampires were ready to finally step out. Only then did they realize that Xian was missing. While he was happily enjoying ice cream with Suha, John contacted him through telepathy. Xian obviously gave them the wrong time to meet up, just so he could enjoy his time alone with her. Solon would have his head for this, but Xian was unfazed by his threats. Suha thanked Xian for making time to hang out. She thought he also probably had something to do, like everyone else, and was glad he made time for her. If only she knew. Being afraid of crowds, this was her first time actually coming to the plaza. He suggested they go on a boat ride, the best place to get away from people. As he left to buy tickets, she heard Helly's voice in her head. Despite being busy, he told her he had something more important to do today. Meeting her. She jolted, thinking he wasn't supposed to joke about stuff like that. But it wasn't a joke. He would apologize for being late to such an important commitment, and asked her to wait for him. Deciding to go tell Xian that Helly was coming, Suha lost her way around the plaza. Passing by a dark alley, she figured it was better to go back and wait. But suddenly, a hand reached out and pulled her in. Her feet dragged as she struggled to break free. Then she caught sight of the person's features. Red eyes, sharp fangs, and claws. Desperate to get away, she would use her superhuman strength, slamming him to the ground. Something was off. The sound of cracking bones filled the air as the man slowly stood up, baring fangs and hissing loudly. He was an actual vampire. But before he could touch her, Xian finally showed up, slamming the vampire's head into the wall. While he tried to make sure she was alright, the vampire snuck up on him from behind. Suha rushed to attack, but would miss, shattering the ground with her fist. In the blink of an eye, Jaka would swoop her away to safety. Then John would show up, landing a heavy blow on the vampires. But their worries were far from over, as the vampire stood up once again, demanding they give him Suha. Why would it specifically want her at that moment? Vampires showed up behind them. To protect her, Jaka quickly fled with Suha. Her body could barely keep up with his speed as he jumped across the buildings. Eventually, she felt like puking. At another alley, Gino and the others were also battling a group of vampires. He demanded to know who had put them up to this, but he couldn't get an answer. The vampire assailants had lost all their sense of reason. Xian and John met up with them after that. Solon questioned Xian, asking how this happened when he was with Suha. He explained that she was gone when he got back from buying tickets. Still, it wasn't an excuse to leave her in an area she was unfamiliar with. As for the low-level vampires, it didn't make sense that they'd risk getting exposed to sunlight, knowing it could destroy them. Low-level vampires shouldn't be able to move around until it was completely dark. Helly knew this wasn't just a coincidence, and considered the idea. They were targeting Suha. Back at the plaza, she was still recovering from Jaka's incredible speed. She just needed a little rest to get herself together. Suha would thank him for always coming to her rescue. However, how did he know exactly where to find her? While he tried to explain, it was as if the world went into slow motion. Looking up, Suha was stunned, seeing someone who looked like Chris. Back then, she thought they would always be together. But on one rainy day, Suha ran to the church as its bells rang. Getting inside, her eyes would meet the horrible sight of Chris's dead body, killed with a stake to the heart. Vampires took Chris from her, and sadness filled her heart. Now, standing in front of this familiar face, he called out to her, and without hesitating, she ran to him. Helly's voice popped in Suha's head. asking if she was alright. He was making his way to her, but she told him she was busy. Suddenly, Khan would bump into her, happy to see her, but by the time she turned back, Chris had vanished. Khan asked if she was here with someone. That's when Jaka came in between them, letting him know they were together. He wanted to know if it was just the two of them, but Jaka let him know it was none of his business. Khan's friends soon came running to him. At the same time, Heli's squad showed up as well. The air became tense. Khan asked if something happened, and Suha told him about the vampire attack. But John and the others took care of it. Khan warned her not to hang out with the vampires for her own sake. Xian and Tahel would start arguing about who would get to hang out with Suha in the coming weekends, and mentioned they were throwing a birthday party 3 weeks from now. He wanted to invite Suha and told the werewolves to come if they didn't believe him, but they wanted nothing to do with the party. Until Suha suggested they should all celebrate together. Najak and Tahel didn't think twice before accepting. While they kept arguing, Heli noticed Suha's mind seemed to be somewhere else. On their way back, Enzi mentioned that Khan and Tahel were quite concerned about Suha. The two didn't know exactly why. Tahel could sense a strange power in her. Likewise, Najak felt the same. There was definitely just something about her. Khan was most of all intrigued by the fact that vampires fought their own kind to protect her. Back in the dorm, Suha's mind kept pondering. If Chris had lived to be an adult, he would definitely look like the person she saw at the plaza today. But wasn't he dead? She was certain he called her name back then. So many questions plagued her mind. Regardless, all she cared about was that he was alive. Walking by the seaside, she'd see Chris staring at the ocean. He missed her so much. She thought it was really him, but suddenly jolted up, awake from the dream. Despite knowing it was all a dream, Suha ran to the sea, eager to put her mind at ease. Getting there, she saw no sign of Chris. Of course, there was no way he could be here. Then, she noticed it was a full moon tonight, yet all dark around. The moon was glowing red, and close by, wolves howled in response. All except Khan. For some reason, he was the only one who didn't transform under the light of the full moon. He questioned if he was defective. Suha came across him, staring into the ocean. The red moonlight illuminated her beauty. Her red eyes glowed brightly, leaving him speechless. He asked what she was doing here, and in pajamas of all things. She too noticed his features were unusually different. Flustered, Suha finally realized she was in sleepwear, but they'd laugh it over, and she told him she was here to look at the ocean tonight. It was a total eclipse. When the sun, earth, and moon lined up, the moon was hidden in the earth's shadow. It was a really special day. As for Khan, he was here to see the eclipse. He was alone, just like her, and claimed the others were sleeping. Being worried about her, he offered to walk her back. Suha was relieved, considering she was scared of the vampires and the wolves, whom she mistook for stray dogs. Khan's ears perked up, hearing that she found wolves cool. She liked seeing them on TV, but would be scared if she actually ran into one. The next day, Noah kept staring at Gino awkwardly while asking how he was feeling today. Gino figured he wanted someone to practice shooting with. Meeting with the others, Xian dragged his feet toward them, complaining about not finding Suha to give her the invitation letter. He had worn himself out, looking for her everywhere, so they'd all tease him, fighting over who would deliver the letter to her. It was quite strange. Before meeting Suha, they all loved to keep to themselves. The thought of inviting someone else would have never crossed their minds. She was just so special. Gino then had an idea where she might be. Over at the library, Heli would find her. He was here to return the book he borrowed earlier. The book was about legends from an ancient kingdom, featuring vampires and werewolves. These creatures were famous for being mortal enemies, and often appeared together. The werewolves were known to turn into wolves during a full moon. Recalling the eclipse last night, Suha assumed it could prevent them from transforming. Heli wasn't so sure about that, but apparently, werewolves fell in love with the first woman they saw during a total eclipse, and they'd love that woman alone for the rest of their life. Since eclipses were rare, they wouldn't fall in love that often. Suha then mentioned she saw the eclipse at the inlet, and about how Khan told her about the eclipse. Hearing Khan's name, eyes grew wide. A slight gloom lay on his face, hearing she met Khan on the night of the total eclipse. For a moment, she noticed the shadow that crossed his face. She wondered why they didn't get along. Was it because they attended rival schools? Being clueless, she assumed they were on edge because of the upcoming Nightball Championship. Heli would then ask what she thought about school. For the first time in her life, Suha felt like she was having fun. She was grateful to him especially. Heli was the reason she was able to make friends after all. Gino and the others would then meet up with them, each of them pretending like they were so interested in books. Noah's book was upside down. The simping was through the roof. Out of all of them, Helly was the only one who really read much. Suha would then tell them about how werewolves would fall in love with the first woman they saw during a total eclipse and would love only her forever. She thought it was so romantic. On the other hand, the boys weren't too thrilled to hear that. They had nothing good to say about werewolves. Salon would join them, talking down on anyone who was half stray dog. Bruh, what is this self-inflicted racism? Even though Suha loved the werewolves legend, he claimed vampires were better. Suha argued vampires were worse though, and they didn't feel love at all. In fact, they didn't have the kind heart of a human. Just yesterday, they attacked her, and worse, they took her childhood friend. Her anger grew more as she called vampires cold, brutal monsters. She thought werewolves were way better, and vampires were the worst. Just like that, she crushed the hearts of 7 guys without knowing. Later on, the vampires gathered, discussing Suha's outburst. Not only did vampires take her friends, but thanks to her super strength, she was also mistaken for a vampire. They lost any hope of inviting her to the birthday party. But Helly would take the letter, deciding to give it a try. Walking through the hall, he stared at the moonlight, remembering Suha mentioned Khan telling her about the eclipse. Meanwhile, on a train, someone had finally found who they were looking for. While rehearsing for their game plan for the upcoming competition, Khan couldn't stop thinking about that night he was with Suha. The way she sparkled under the moonlight was etched in his memory. He didn't hear a single word his friend said. Tahel asked what they had just been talking about, and he answered that he just needed to score. They could tell something was off about Khan today, but he claimed he just needed some sleep. Tahel would then show him the birthday party invitation from the vampires. However, none of them actually planned to go, except Khan, who seemed eager to see Suha again. As he left, Enzi suspected his strange behavior was because of the eclipse. Even though it was a human, his friends hoped things would work out. Meanwhile, the vampires didn't like the fact that the werewolves were invited to the party. It was all because of Suha. It didn't seem like they had much of a choice, especially since she liked them because they hated vampires as well. Xian feared if she really found out what they were, she'd never want to see them again. This was why Salon warned them not to get close in the first place. As much as they didn't hurt humans, they only knew about themselves. To humans, vampires were all the same. Telling Suha they were an exception wouldn't solve the problem. They couldn't force her. Xian then proposed outing Salon as a vampire, so that the rest of them would be off the hook. Noah and Gino were happily in on the plan to burn him at the stake. Jokes aside, they needed to make sure she wouldn't find out. If Suha did find out, they wouldn't be able to stay here anymore. Gino doubted she would tell anyone if they were vampires even if she found out, but he couldn't be so sure. Sitting alone, Suha was lost in thought, recalling how she lost herself back at the library. As Helly met with her, she apologized for getting so worked up back then. It was only natural, since she hated vampires so much. Handing her the invitation letter, Helly let her know everyone would be happy if she showed up. She asked whose birthday it was, and he said it was all of theirs. None of the boys knew when they were born, but they chose to celebrate on the day they left the orphanage. After the hell they went through the day they fled Vanfield, Solon asked if they really trusted humans. That night, as they ran through the woods, they'd spot a house up ahead. There, they met a young girl and explained the situation. She'd take them to the storage shed where they could rest and promise not to tell anyone. Then she left, returning with some food for them. The little girl was shocked by what she saw. Red, glowing eyes. And these boys were feasting on a chicken. Immediately, all the villagers, armed with their guns, began looking for the vampires. Helly and his brothers had to flee again. They ran into their caretaker, who let them know it was dangerous outside the orphanage. With no other choice, they'd have to return. That was why Solon insisted they could only trust each other. Back outside, Helly asked Suha if she was close to the friend who was killed by the vampires. She told him how her powers made people think she was a vampire. Due to that, she was always alone. Her parents warned her not to use her powers, but Chris was the only one who understood her. One day, with Chris's house set on fire, all Suha could think about was saving him. Rushing inside, she ignored the warnings of her parents. What people would think of her didn't matter. She found Chris trapped under a large cupboard. Lifting it up at that moment, Suha felt this was the reason she had been given this power. Chris, as well, always believed she'd come to his rescue. Suha felt she might never find another friend like him. He had even asked her to bite his neck once, believing she wasn't a vampire. Yet, vampires took her treasured friend away. There was no way she could ever like them. Helly then asked if she wanted to try biting his neck. She would get all flustered. It wasn't like they were kids. The situation was totally different. Regardless, he loosened his tie, baring his neck for her. But she couldn't. It was too embarrassing. However, this was Helly's way of showing how much he trusted her. So, she'd throw the question back to him, asking if he could bite her neck. As he hesitated, She assumed it was because he felt embarrassed as well. Little did she know, there was another reason. One of the reasons Suha wanted to come to the school was the library. It had lots of old books, which she thought might contain the vampire's weaknesses. But when vampires showed up at the plaza the other day, it was her first time seeing one. She'd never been so terrified and couldn't stop shaking. It was like her whole body froze. That moment made her certain that vampires were really monsters. The next day, Khan was on call with Mahan and some other colleagues. They were still investigating the situation of their missing friends. Mahan believed the vampires were definitely behind this, although Khan explained that Heli and his allies didn't seem like allies to the vampires they were fighting. Mahan didn't really care though. After the call, Khan quickly left. The jock felt he might be bothered about the fact that he couldn't transform. Although none of them cared about that, Enzi mentioned everyone was still bothered by different things. His encounter with Salon in particular. While setting up decorations for the birthday party, Salon asked if the werewolves were still coming. Jaka told him they hadn't responded to their invitation, but they'd continue with preparations in case they showed up. Suddenly, they'd hear John screaming from the kitchen. Heli accidentally dropped the birthday cake, ruining John's masterpiece. They couldn't have a birthday party without a cake, so they'd ask John to help buy more ingredients. In an instant, he was back, but ramen was missing. Heli and Gino really wanted some, so Jaka would have to step out again. Soon after, they were done with all the preparations. Arriving at the place, Suha was welcomed by Heli and Shion. She was amazed to find such a big mansion deep in the woods. Heli mentioned they had inherited from someone who supported them after they left the orphanage. Just as he invited Suha to show her around, Khan and his friends would show up behind her. Seeing Khan, she was so happy, but Heli didn't seem to like that. Oh man, how's this party gonna go? Is there gonna be drama? Probably. Subscribe to keep up with next week's part, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, Comfy T. I'll see you all in the next one.